Here we go into the conversation deeper with Brandon Arnold. He is the executive vice president of the National Taxpayers Union. We're hoping to pay less in taxes going forward. What is the economic policy going to be of the incoming Trump administration? Brandon, nice to see you again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so here we are. Let's start with the fact that people like Linda McMahon could be a Secretary of Commerce. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy could be in charge of getting rid of wasteful government spending. We might actually make some traction on this. What are you seeing when it comes to economics and the economy, the picks that are being made by Donald Trump? What do you think of it?
I think a lot of these picks are highly encouraging. It's great to see people from the business community get involved in government because I think they bring a fresh set of eyes to what a lot of people that have spent too much time in Washington just fail to see, and that is all the waste, fraud, abuse, the mismanagement of funds that would never be tolerated in the private sector, because if you did that kind of stuff in the private sector, you'd be out of business in a New York minute. But here in the government sector, people get away with it each and every day. So these people that have been successful in the business world, let's bring those perspectives into the government. Let's root out the waste, that fraud. Let's make government more efficient so that we can reduce spending, make the government smaller in the process. So I have my fingers crossed. I have a lot of optimism about bringing some of these new folks into the mix.
Yeah. So as you stand here and you look at taxes, obviously the Trump tax cuts will likely survive. He also promised to cut taxes on tips, Social Security, overtime, other places. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's going to be tough to piece all this together. Making the math work is really challenging because our national debt is 75% higher than it was in 2017 when Trump took office. Biden has spent, and his colleagues in the Congress have spent like drunken sailors. And now we have this enormous debt problem. We're going to spend $1 trillion this year just on interest payments on the national debt. So I say all that when it comes to tax policy is that we really need to prioritize things that are going to help working families, things that are going to help our small businesses, and things that are going to stimulate economic growth. And I think some of those proposals don't meet all of those objectives, and therefore, in the interest of also keeping the debt under control, are probably going to have to be left out of the package.
Yeah, here's the thing. A lot of economists, including people like Harry Dent, well known, say that, and I've said this from the beginning, I said whoever wins the election could end up paying a huge political price because I believe that there could be a correction in the market. Some would call it a crash potentially by mid-2025 because our debt load is so high, as you've pointed out, Brandon. I mean, there's no way to get away from the debt. And so are we in a bubble here? I mean, the stock market's had a great ride since Donald Trump was elected 8 days ago now, but I have been warning people. 2025, there could be a great correction, a crash, if you will. Now, that's going to give Donald Trump time to correct before 2028, but it could be very painful, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we've seen mismanagement of the federal government over the last 4 years that have exacerbated this problem. But there's still a lot of private sector issues that have to be worked out. Those high interest rates, especially relative to what interest rates were during the pandemic, have created really weird kind of functionality in the housing markets where people are staying in their homes because they have extraordinarily low interest rates. We're not bringing enough inventory online. We need to kind of fix the regulatory mess that has been created, bring more houses online, encourage more manufacturing production, more investment in this country. That's a lot of work to be done if we're going to get things to function properly. And we're seeing just this morning, interest rates beginning to tick in the wrong direction after we made a little bit of progress there. That's really concerning. And interest rates cuts could actually, while stimulating the economy and helping a lot of Americans, could actually encourage inflation to tick up even more. So a lot of things to be worried about here. And Trump really needs to nail this tax package and his deregulatory agenda as well.
So how do you get there? How do you, I mean, you're basically saying thread the needle. Brandon, what you're saying is he needs to thread the needle to kind of keep everything balanced, but he's balanced on the point of a pin, it seems.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. I think you're right to point to a lot of danger signs in the economy at large. And that's why I really want to prioritize with the tax package, making sure we're not raising taxes on any family right now, because if we don't pass a tax package before the end of 2025, we'll see a $4 trillion tax increase that would be backbreaking for families, many of whom have taken on extraordinarily amounts of debt during the last several years and are really struggling to pay their utility bills, their mortgage, and so forth. So we need to keep taxes low. We need to start deregulating a lot of the nonsense that we've seen from the Biden administration and regulations that have been on the books for decades, streamlining permitting processes, things like that, so we can actually build houses, we can build factories, we can build roads, all of the things that will create jobs and help our economy function more smoothly. And the other thing we really need to do is drive down energy costs. That doesn't mean we're going to just simply wrap our arms around the green community, the green energy sector, the way Biden does. If green energy is part of the solution, that's great. But we also need to embrace traditional fossil fuels, traditional forms of energy, so we have stability and security in our energy markets. And Biden really went the wrong direction there, and we're paying the price for it.
Yeah. So when they pumped in all that money, we got inflation that was over 9%. I wonder what the response is going to be here. 25 years it's been, give or take, since we balanced the budget around here. We've had upwards of 20 years of runaway deficits. I mean, you just look. I mean, Donald Trump added $8 trillion to the deficit. I think Biden and Harris added $7 trillion. And some of that in the middle, of course, is overlap from COVID spending on both sides. We're at a point where, look, at some point, the bill comes due. It just simply comes due. You can't ignore it forever, can you?
No, I mean, the level of debt we have right now is just astonishing. If you factored it out over every household in America, it's about $200,000 per household. So if we all wrote a check for $200,000, we could fix this problem. Of course, that isn't happening. We have to dig out of this. It's going to be a long, drawn out process, but it needs to be a top priority because, as you said, it's not just an ethical issue with passing down debt to our children, our grandchildren, to future generations, which I think is really inappropriate and unfair to them. It's also an economic problem because that debt creates drag. It moves investments that should be taking place in the private sector, growing new businesses, innovating, creating new pharmaceutical products, AI, technology, and so forth. It moves investment away from those into treasury bills and government instruments, which is a bad thing. We want money to flow into the private sector where we can create jobs, innovate, outcompete other countries. But the more debt we have, the harder it is to move in that direction. So this is a colossal task, and hopefully Trump is ready to roll up his sleeves. Like I said, I'm encouraged to bring Elon Musk and other luminaries from the private sector into the fold here, but they really have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, because of several failed fiscal policies leading up to this. And some of it, look, Donald Trump's responsible for some of this debt previously. And so we need this fiscal commission. But, you know, I look at $1 trillion already sitting out there of unspent COVID money. They're just going to try to spend it anyway, Brandon, and they should leave that money alone and say, look, we don't need COVID's over. Stop trying to spend that money. Anyhow, Brandon Arnold, always appreciate you being here. National Taxpayers Union. Hopefully there's some relief for the average guy, and we don't see a recession or a depression because that would get blamed on Trump. Fairly or not, that's what happens with politicians. Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Brandon Arnold, everybody. Look, I've said it for a long time. 2025, there could be a great correction, a market crash, a severe amount of calamity in the economy and in the economic markets. And I said that could happen no matter who was elected president. I stand by that prediction. I'll be back. It's the Steve